The latest crime stats presented by Police Minister Bheki Cele show that South Africa has failed to recalibrate and develop communities over the past 3 decades. That's the view of the Good political party. The organisation says crime is not just a product of poor policing alone, but a product of a toxic blend of social and economic injustice. To talk some more about their reaction, I'm joined by Good Secretary General Brett Herron, who joins us virtually from Cape Town. Brett, you know, we have to deal with these figures as part of our job more regularly. And when we broke that news yesterday, I will say that it did make me pause. It did sit very uncomfortably in the base of my throat, because the figure of over 7,500 people killed between October and December, just 3 months last year, it's just too hard a pill to swallow. What was your reaction to this latest set of figures?
Well, the latest set of figures continue to show that South Africa is not beating the crime problem. Any improvement in any of the categories of crime, I think, is coincidental. The general trend is that crime continues to overwhelm South Africans. And it is very, very clear that although we need better policing, better quality policing, police stations that are better equipped to respond to crime, that is the point, that police stations respond to crime. And until we address the conditions that communities are living under, the high unemployment rate, the huge inequalities, the failure to address the disparities in infrastructure and services and access to education between poor communities that were relegated to the outskirts of towns and cities under apartheid, until we address that legacy, we cannot really expect, I think, policing to solve the crime problem.
Yeah, you speak at length in your statement about how this we have to admit that this is the result of intergenerational trauma, intergenerational oppression, issues that have been allowed to fester and grow, ghettos that have been created because we haven't looked at housing in a holistic way. But that, of course, speaks to the fact that we've known for a very long time that crime in South Africa is not something that can be fought or battled in silos, and that various government departments need to talk to each other more succinctly to try and battle this on various levels. Are you seeing enough of that actually happening? Because all I see is Bheki Cele making a statement every 3 months. This is what we're doing. We're going to focus more on getting guns off the streets, and the list goes on. Why are we not seeing a more multidimensional approach from various portfolios in government?
Well, I think it's a failure of government as a whole to fully comprehend that how we develop our housing program and how we implement it, how we roll out education, how we address the lack of access to income. So the fact that there are 10 million or more South Africans who are of working age who are unable to find jobs and who have zero income because they don't qualify in terms of our social security system for any support. The combination of factors that South Africans deal with, in poorer communities deal with, those factors are not addressed in a way that will resolve the crime problem. So, yeah, we get the crime stats. We have every South African knows we live in a crime-ridden society, a very violent society, but government doesn't seem to understand that it is not only a policing issue, and that in fact there are a number of departments and ministers who need to come forward in an integrated way to resolve these problems. And it does start with addressing this legacy that we've inherited and that we've never fully addressed, but probably have perpetuated through a housing program that is focused on delivering large-scale projects, creating suburbs or ghettos of poverty without any consideration of the social consequences of that.
You also say in your statement that the rest of society, including business and the middle class, also have to accept some responsibility for the country's total failure to narrow the gap between the haves and have-nots. Now, I can hear those in the more leafier suburbs saying, oh, Brett, but what more do you want me to do? I pay taxes, I give to charities, I'm spending all this money on extra security because the police are not doing their jobs. What more do you want us to do, Brett? What's your response to that?
I really want people to understand that we're all connected and we're all in this together. That what happens I live in Cape Town, so in a leafy suburb, but what happens in Gugulethu or Khayelitsha or Bonteheuwel or Manenberg, where people are faced with gunfire day in and day out, is all of our problem. It's not just the people of Bonteheuwel and Manenberg and Nyanga and Khayelitsha. It's not just their problem. We are all in this together, and that we have to accept that there's a disparity in both the development of our communities. My community is much more developed than those communities. And that means that when we see, or when we have our governments implementing programs in communities, we must encourage governments to eliminate those disparities. So there is, there is a role that the middle class community can play in encouraging, in championing that a disparity of services and infrastructure must be eliminated, and that we must expect that that would result in perhaps services being reduced in our community. So, I can report a water leak in my street and it'll be fixed within hours. The people in Langa in Cape Town can report a leak and it's not fixed for 5 months. So we have to accept that there's a responsibility on our local government and our provincial government and our national government to address those disparities, and that will impact us as middle-class South Africans.
I want to ask you about the role of that local or municipal level administrators or leaders or officers, call them what you will. In Gauteng, we have got a policing project called Okai Malau. And every weekend we cross to the police commissioner where he focuses on community and tells us what the issues there are and what they can do. And what always strikes me about those conversations is the collective of the little things that actually can be fixed, that could actually make a big difference. And the first thing we always speak about is the lack of street lighting, and what a massive difference that could make just in making people feel safer and making it easier for our law enforcement to be able to move around. And yet when we look at crime statistics, our office bearers at municipal levels are always very quick to say, well, policing isn't part of our job, it's at national level and that kind of thing. Where can we find each other in the middle to try and see what the smaller things are that we can actually fix at municipal level that could actually make the lives easier for those having to take care of policing at a higher level, if you understand what I'm asking?
I think it goes back to your first question where you said, what about the other government departments and what role do they have to play in addressing crime? So yes, local government has a role to play in making sure that communities are accessible. So that means that roadways are navigable by emergency vehicles, whether they be ambulances or police vehicles. That means informal settlements are serviced in a way that they are also accessible by emergency vehicles. As you said, that there's adequate street lighting and the street lighting works. And so the integration of services that government provides across local, provincial, and national spheres must be better coordinated. And there are good policies in place to ensure that that integration takes place. Every major city in South Africa has to produce an annual plan, which is called a Built Environment Performance Plan, which is meant to be developed in consultation with provincial spheres and national spheres of government, and to deal with issues like this before you will get your cash transfers from national government as a city. You need to have this approved plan. But the problem is these plans are plans on paper, but they're never really implemented. So there is a role to play in local government, by local government, in making environments more conducive for crime prevention measures to be effective. And that is not happening. And that is because, as I said earlier, there is a disparity in terms of infrastructure and services in those communities. And this is where local government can play a role in assisting the South African police services, which is a national competency in the crime prevention space.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. Good Secretary General Brett Herron joining us virtually there from Cape Town.